Hey folks, William Diaz here with Rebel News. Let me tell you what you need to know about Day 4 of the proceedings of the Public Order Emergency Inquiry taking place here in Ottawa. Before we begin, let me once again remind you of what is going on here. Let me refresh your memory. In February, Justin Trudeau invoked a never used before anti-terrorism law called the Emergencies Act to euthanize nearly 4 weeks of people protest against COVID-19 measures taking place on the streets of Ottawa.
The Emergencies Act will also allow the government to make sure essential services are rendered, for example, in order to tow vehicles blocking roads.
The inquiry's role is to determine whether or not the use of the Act was necessary and justified. The Act itself calls for an inquiry if it is ever invoked, and the inquiry must investigate the extraordinary tools of arrest and property seizures were required by the government, and if the protest itself rolled to the level of a 9/11 event. Tuesday, we saw the current Ottawa Mayor Jim Watson, who has opposed the convoy from the beginning, testified some very bizarre things. Much of his testimony was supposition and relied heavily on debunked media lies. Watson said that the convoy showed unruly behavior from these people who come basically to occupy our downtown. He also called the truckers nasty, occupiers violent, and that they came to Ottawa to quote-unquote disrupt the quality of life.
You told us earlier today, where evidence came out that these protesters, they were nasty, they were hateful, and they were vulgar. Is that right?
Yes.
And you said that you saw, or you said that they had ripped masks off of people.
Yes.
Did you actually see that?
No, I saw it reported in the media.
Why do you think we're seeing so much hearsay? And what can council do? How much do you think is going to have an impact on the result of the commission?
Well, you know, we have a very seasoned judge who is the commissioner. Mm-hmm. He's a justice of the Ontario Court of Appeal. He has 20 years of experience of being a judge and adjudicating matters. I think he has a keen eye and a keen ear, and he will seek to sift out the real evidence from the political posturing. Yeah. And because it's a commission inquiry, the formal rules of evidence don't apply. So hearsay evidence is allowed. But what a decision maker does in that circumstance is it goes to weight. How much weight do they give that evidence? And we'll have to see.
After Watson's anecdote-infested testimony, I spoke to the convoy organizers' lawyers, Keith Wilson, for him to give me his thoughts on what he saw. Here's what he said.
Well, it was pretty clear that what the mayor was doing this morning was using every opportunity he could to say bad things about the protesters. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he said was that they're an irrational group and you couldn't negotiate with them, where in fact we did negotiate with the mayor. Yeah. And he acknowledged that the agreement was successful. He acknowledged that over 100 vehicles left the downtown and several blocks were cleared. Mm-hmm. And he acknowledged that the truckers had upheld their end of the bargain. It's pretty clear when you look at the repeated derogatory phrases that the mayor used. I think he's trying to help the Prime Minister out.
Now, Jim Watson couldn't just leave the building without a scrutiny, certainly not after a testimony he gave, which is why I asked him questions twice, despite his unwillingness to engage. This isn't the first time Watson is unwilling to engage with the opposite side. We saw during the convoy that he did not want to have discussions with the truckers, saying that they are incapable of having rational discussions. Watch how our two encounters unfolded. Mr. Watson, you stated earlier that protesters were not able to discuss rationally, to have rational conversations. Yet we saw yesterday Keith Wilson have a courteous exchange. Why doesn't the evidence corroborate your testimony?
He's not going to speak right now.
Perfect, thank you. Mr. Watson, why do you keep talking about incidents that you only see on the media and not by yourself?
Mr. Watson, why did you vote against a motion to pursue the Emergencies Act, but then welcome it a week later? Why did you vote against that at council?
Finally, here are parts of the testimony of the second witness of the day, Kim Ayat, the emergency services manager from the city of Ottawa, whose testimony directly contradicted the historical testimony given by the councillors Florian McKenney about the convoy blocking the emergency services vehicles, and Jim Watson.
Parking tickets serve as a deterrent to illegal parking, don't they?
They do.
When people know that parking illegally will get them a ticket and a fine, that deters at least some people from parking illegally, doesn't it?
Yes, of course.
Stay tuned with everything that's going on here in Ottawa, and to support our independent journalism, you can head on to truckercommission.com. Thank you for watching. For Rebel News, this was William Diaz. So if you want to help us fund our trip here in Ottawa to bring you the other side of the story from the Emergencies Act Commission taking place from October 13th to November 25th, please head on to truckercommission.com and consider chipping in.